Give a huge thanks to all of the writers for being here. A big thanks to our staff as well. Yvonne, our programs coordinator, put a lot of work into this program. As well as Jimmy, our assistant director, Emmanuel in the booth, Jay in the bookstore. They're all fabulous people, so say hi to them. And I really want to give a big thanks, especially to the Los Angeles Institute for the Humanities for suggesting and co-organizing this. It's really a great opportunity to work with them. They do incredible work cultivating literature humanities here in Los Angeles. So thanks especially to their associate director, Janice Littlejohn, who did an immense amount of work organizing this reception. It was originally supposed to be outside before the hurricane or whatever. And also a very, very big thank you to the Institute's co-chair, the great Louise Steinman, who's here with us tonight to say a few words about the LA Institute for Humanities. So please welcome Louise. I'll come up to introduce the readers in just a bit.
Thank you so much. And when you said when Beyond Baroque was founded, I think that falls in with my story because I came and read at Beyond Baroque when I was 16, growing up in LA. So I think that tells you how old I am. I'm so pleased to be here tonight and to see all of you. Most of you or some of you might know what the Institute is. We're a eclectic mix of academics, scientists, poets, novelists, curators, community advocates, community workers who gather twice a month, usually, to hear a talk, to have a robust discussion, to mix up the different institutions here in town. It's not always that easy to meet people who are working in different disciplines, and definitely has an interdisciplinary core. And there are many writers associated with the Institute. We get to hear some of the wonderful ones here tonight. It's a really remarkable lineup. So thank you so much for welcoming us to Beyond Baroque, a great institution. And I'm really eager to hear our writers tonight. So please enjoy.
Great, thank you so much, Louise. So to start off with, our first reader is a very good friend of Beyond Baroque's, Shonda Buchanan. Shonda is a Pushcart Prize nominee, a USC Los Angeles Institute for the Humanities Fellow, of course, and a Department of Cultural Affairs, City of Los Angeles Master Artist Fellow. She's the author of 5 books, including the award-winning memoir, Black Indian, winner of the 2020 Indie New Generation Book Award. She currently serves as president of the board of trustees of Beyond Baroque, and is a recipient of the Brody Arts Fellowship from the California Community Foundation, a Big Read grant from the National Endowment for the Arts, and several Virginia Foundation for the Humanities grants. Shonda is currently a writing instructor for first-year seminar and a senior lecturer for the Department of African American Studies at Loyola Marymount University. And she recently completed a collection of poetry about Nina Simone and is working on her second memoir and a novel. Shonda lives and writes in her adopted home on Tongva and Chumash land in Los Angeles, California. Please welcome Shonda Buchanan.
So many of my favorite people here. So incredibly grateful. Thank you, everyone. Janice, the goddess, thank you so very much for organizing this and all that amazing food. Can we give her? Thank you. And of course, Beyond Baroque. And please forgive me because I'm always, as the president, going to ask for your money. So just if I say, oh, and we've got the Amanda Gorman Scholarship event happening October 1st, and we're going to start back fundraising for the next batch of young people. Please, give a little donation, but you'll see that on my social media. So I'm grateful to be here. Thank you. Alabama's got me so upset. Tennessee makes me lose my breath. But everybody knows about Mississippi, goddamn. I scroll through the headlines. I don't see them. I watch the news for hours and days and see celebrities getting married and sucking up water we need, see the Queen's life and death splayed and praised, her memory parsed like lovers part your hair. See Pakistan's biblical floods that peeled homes from the earth and took souls in their sleep, bless them. And I see food, So much food and chefs and commercials and reruns and rows of mansions and vacations and student loan debt relief. Thank you, Jesus. But Jackson, Mississippi can't drink the water. Where is their relief? Everyone Black is thinking this. We are invisible again, thirsty again. History is under our tongues. Honeycomb scent of magnolias and mint julep hangs in the overly sensitive air, humming in a field above the heat, so much heat creasing the lattice backs of Black sparrows and their children born there. We are unagented again, unseen. Where is their DEIA water? Alabama's got me so upset. Tennessee makes me lose my breath. My Okolona born and bred daddy never told me any stories of his Mississippi, but I could smell it on him. In his preacher sweat, his alcoholic silences, Black mud and well water dreams, custard pies and pig feet Juneteenths, corn husks and straw in his shoe for cushion, cotton boll roots and blood songs under the earth. His people singing to a river they couldn't drink. These things he kept from me, his daughter, things he thought she didn't need to hear, because I can't say them anyway. But I scroll the headlines. I don't see us. I see my father shimmering in a field haloed by dust and grief, frayed straw hat against his chest after a long day of praying for rain. He is thirsty. They are thirsty. But how do you give water to ghosts? Mississippi on my mind, y'all. So it's ironic, maybe that's not the word, but one of the poems in my Nina Simone book deals with how the Irish came to the US and enslaved Black people and Indians, American Indians. So this morning on Twitter, I don't know, has anyone checked out Irish Twitter? All the dancing and like beer, like pub drinking that's happening because the Queen is dead. And so people are like, so if you haven't, check out Irish Twitter. It was just like, it's hilarious. I mean, it's like people are doing praise dance, like, you know, because the Queen is dead. And so in my mind, I'm like, you know, many things happen when you think about people passing. And it's like, she did what she could. I understand that. The Irish were oppressed. I understand that. The Irish oppressed. This we know as well. So my poem speaks to just the sensibility of how Nina Simone came into that piece of the Irish and the American Indian and the African piece. Of deeds and blood moons. One of the first 1670 surveyors of the Carolina colony, Florence O'Sullivan, was an Irishman who drew the boundaries wrong. Both prominent Irish who'd migrated to low country for free Indian land, plantation owners, and their poorer cousins who secretly traded with the enslaved, made up 4,996 of the South Carolina thieves listed in the 1790 census. Some Barbados-born Irish had been coming for years. Mixing of the races was simple math of pollination back then. Harvests unforeseen. They were seedlings, milking the coffee babies, blood moon fire breathers. Nina's Cherokee great-grandmother claimed her Irish blood and married an African. Her grandmother's mother, half Irish and Indian, married another enslaved African man. Nina, little Eunice, was the proof of this isthmus. 3 rivers flowing through her butterfly heart. She shared the blood of first-generation South Carolina Irishmen who signed the Declaration of some people's independence. She inherited rice-field dreams from Andrew Jackson's Scot-Irish parents. Poor Carolina migrants turned slavers who'd come to see if the rumors were true. Free land as a royal colony, and if they'd first fight Indians, any Irish settler was granted 100 acres per head right, meaning 100 acres for yourself and for each family member or indentured servant, Black or Indian slave. But later they could only get 50 apiece. Between 1731 and 1738, 1 million acres of Carolina Indian land had been claimed, platted, and deemed taxable. A cruel magic trick. Low Country earned its name honest, bleeding from its navel, hostage of a governor who held 19,000 acres alone. His homies owned 6,000 apiece. There had never been an official separation of North Carolina and South Carolina until Florence O'Sullivan's crooked map. And still the Catawba Indians petitioned the crown to go around them. And they did until it became inconvenient. Bloody ribbons of erasure and homemade Irish rum, knotted with salty desire, united by illegal seizure of butterfly wings. We call what was left over miscegenation, not love, not greed, not desire, the land repossessed, the deed done, and no one was free. Thank you. In the interest of time, I'm going to let the next person come up. Thank you so much.
Shonda Buchanan, everyone. Thank you. Our next reader is Josh Kuhn. Josh is an author and editor of several books, including Audiotopia, Music, Race in America, Songs in the Keys of Los Angeles, The Tide Was Always High, The Music of Latin America in Los Angeles, Double Vision, The Photography of George Rodriguez, and the autograph book of LA, Improvements on the Page of the City. As a curator and artist, he has collaborated with the Los Angeles Public Library, Californian African American Museum, the Grammy Museum, SF MoMA, Prospect New Orleans, among many others. His next book, Beats Across Borders, a migrant songbook, will be published by MCD Books FSG. He is interim dean of the Thornton School of Music at USC, where he is professor in the Annenberg School of Communications and Journalism, and chair in cross-cultural communication. He is the recipient of a MacArthur Fellowship, a Berlin Prize, and an American Book Award. Everyone, please welcome Josh Kuhn.
Thanks, everybody. Thank you, Janice, for having me here and for putting this together. I'm going to read from a little bit from the autograph book of LA a few years back. Hopefully it still stands up. Roll call. Biddy, Ambrose, Fernando, Angeline, John, Cheech, Jane, Father Greg, Nipsey, Willie, Poppy, Ed, Booker, Gustavo, Judy, Louie, Betty, Art, Lauren, Mildred, Frank, Attica, Jay Gold, B+, Cube, Murray, Mary, Jackson, Eve, Hawkins #1, Best Burger, Rafa, Rodney, Pablo, Ahilan, Aquila, Joan, Horace, Maricela, Doris, Funkawatlu, Kendrick, Mar, Octavia, Sochi, Sugar, Anderson, Corla, Lil Puppet, Evan, Roosevelt class of 2019, Gronk, Shosen, Ramona, Yamila, Shizu, Wolfgang, Robin, Esteban, Hada, Linnell, Kamasi, Julia, Magic, Louise, Dana, Janice, Peter, Timothy, Cody, Shonda, Lynne. Your name here. This one's dedicated to the one I love. Sign your name across my heart. I was here. Say her name. We out here. Remember me, always and forever, presente con Safos. The history of Los Angeles is the history of autographs, the history of the signatures that have been left on its pages. The city is a book, an encyclopedic binding of walls, freeways, buildings, arms, trees, sidewalks, barracks, riverbeds, bathroom stalls, faces, and roadside altars. The city is an endless calligraphic sprawl. Hector Tobar says, broad avenues lined with Chinese pictographs and Arabic calligraphy and Cyrillic, long boulevards of Spanish enyes. The city is a naming opportunity with gifts at all levels accepted. Ask the city, can I have your autograph? The city says, I've already given it to you. Look up at the walls, look down beneath your feet, check the tunnels, walk the riverbeds, scan the trees and the bathroom walls, read the street names and the park names and the freeway names, check for tags. The city says, my pages are always being improved upon. To Josh, a future Dodger. Tommy Lasorda signed a picture of himself for me when I was in 4th grade. It didn't fit in my index card size autograph book with brown plastic covers and fake gold autographs lettering, but I kept it close to me anyway, and it quickly became my favorite of the few autographs that I had already coveted. That is until a few years later when I went to a record fair at the Century Plaza Hotel, keynote speaker Anita Baker, and got the autograph of the rapper Egyptian Lover. He signed his 12-inch LP single of Egypt, Egypt with a black Sharpie and immediately beat Tommy Lasorda at the dedication game. He wrote, to Josh, boom, homeboy. I've had the album framed ever since, and it's now hung in my office right next to an LP once owned by my late grandfather, signed and dedicated to him by his version of Egyptian Lover, Ray Conniff. I never framed the Lasorda photo, probably because I knew that I would never be a Dodger in any future, but boom, homeboy, I still hold out for that. There have been stray autographs I've collected since, Spanish pop star Mona Bell, Barry Greg Brady Williams, but Egyptian Lover's autograph still lights me up whenever I see it. It places me in time, it manifests my tastes, it reminds me who I've been and how I've wanted to be. People collect celebrity autographs for all sorts of reasons, but this is surely one of them. A name written in someone else's hand gives us a piece of ourselves. So we hunt for them. We become hounds. We hunt and hound for ourselves. What if the age of the signature is over? In 2018, all major US credit card companies announced that they will no longer require signatures to process and verify customer transactions. The signature has really outrun its life, a MasterCard executive recently declared. We rarely sign checks and grumble about those in front of us in line who do. We shop online without clicking a pen. We sign into devices with our faces or fingertips. We're processed at security checkpoints with digital chips and retina scans. Emails have largely replaced handwritten letters and cards sent by post. And while tags still appear on walls, the most commonly used tags are the ones we leave digitally on our social media posts and Instagram photos. We sign more petitions than ever before, but rarely in our own hand. When we use DocuSign to validate mortgages or leases and all the other official forms, the signature we leave can be one that has been digitally provided for us, one that may look nothing like the lines and curves that our hand has been producing uniquely, with all the script variations that come with the contingencies of time, place, mood, age, and bumpy flights since we learned to write. Increasingly, a data-produced digital signature isn't even needed. A data-produced digital initials will do just fine. All of this autograph digitization has understandably set off alarm bells. Will we ever be asked to sign our names again? Will we forget how to do it? Is this the final act in our transformation into bytes and binary code, the final curtain on our organic analog selves? Losing our signatures is like losing our voices. Who are we as unique individuals without our unique signatures? and all of the morphing personalities, particular grip techniques, and aging bodies that make them what they are. Who am I, if not the bulbous off-balance swoop of my J, the wavy, tremulous line that O, S, H, K, U, N have all learned to become? Like the AI software that replicates our spoken voices after we die, the digital displacement of the autograph produces a human crisis of identity and authenticity. Without our signatures, maybe we aren't who we say we are. Maybe we never were. And yet, there's still this. Even in the midst of our digital moment, thousands of people, tourists and residents alike, every single day flock to local beaches to leave perhaps the most iconic and evergreen LA autograph of all. They use their fingers to drag their names and initials in the sand, digging curving canals that spell out, "I love you," or "Will you marry me?" They do this knowing full well that the tide will soon rise, that water will wash it away if the wind or destructive little brother doesn't get there first. They sign the sand not out of arrogance, but out of humility. They leave their names in the sand because they know that neither they nor their names will last forever. Thanks.
Good, everyone.
Thank you so much. Our next reader is Timothy Steele. Timothy has published several collections of verse, most recently Toward the Winter Solstice. He's also the author of 2 prose books about poetry, Missing Measures and All's Fun in How You Say a Thing, and has edited the poems of J.V. Cunningham. His honors include a Wallace Stegner Fellowship in Creative Writing from Stanford University, a Peter I.B. Levon Younger Poets Award from the Academy of American Poets, and a Guggenheim Fellowship. Everyone, please welcome Timothy Steele.
Thank you. Thank you, Quentin. And thank you, Janice, for arranging this event and Beyond Baroque for hosting it. I'll read 3 poems this evening, all with Los Angeles settings. The first I wrote last month. My wife and I have a bird bath in the backyard. And in the current heat wave, they've been patronizing it with particular avidity. And a couple of weeks ago, I went out one morning to rinse it out and fill it, and I listened to them sort of get excited and vocalize at my approach and the anticipation of fresh water. And it seemed to me they were cheering me on in French, saying, "Vite, vite," you know, quick, quick, hurry up. And this poem resulted. Bird bath during the dog days. The birds nearby have thirsts to quench. I fill their basin in the heat. They chatter in what sounds like French. Vite, vite, they seem to urge. Vite, vite. I shut the hose. My leaving brings the flock in. Some drink, wade, relax. Some flap the water with their wings and tail flip water to their backs. Most are house finches, but a grand brown towhee sits among them there. His messy, soaked crown feathers stand upright like Liberty's spiked hair. They dart back to the trees to preen and relish being cool and wet. Quiet till I return to clean return to clean the basin for their next toilette. The Vite Vite choir begins again. It's wrong of them to rush me so, and yet they're right. I've always been, alas, deliberate and slow. The next poem goes back 30 years, though the subject is of perennial concern in Los Angeles. It's traffic and how cars and paved roads were meant to connect us, but in fact, over time, really have divided communities and people. At the time, my wife and I were living in the Pico Robertson area on 18th Street. we had a little flower garden, and across the street was an elderly widow who had a lemon tree, and we would trade flowers for lemons. This was sort of a nice pastoral exchange, but it was always menaced by the cars on 18th Street. If you know the area, it's an alternate route for the Santa Monica Freeway when it gets congested. And though it's just a little 2-lane, partly commercial, partly residential street, people drive on it like it was a freeway at 50, 60 miles an hour. And so you have to step lively to get across it and watch your step. I grew up in Vermont. We were talking earlier this evening, some of us, about where we came from before we lived in LA. And there's an allusion in the poem that you'll all get, I'm sure, to famous Robert Frost poem on a similar theme. The neighbor across the street not only gave me lemons, but gave me in her name the title of the poem, Faye. I bring Faye flowers. When I cross the street, she meets and gives me lemons from her tree. As if competitors in a Grand Prix, the cars that speed past threaten to defeat the sharing of our gardens and our labors. Their automotive moral seems to be that held for leather traffic makes good neighbors. 10 years a widow, standing at her gate, she speaks of friends, her cat's trip to the vet, a grandchild's struggle with the alphabet. I conversationally reciprocate with talk of work at school, not deep, not meaty. Before I leave, we study and regret her alley's newest samples of graffiti. Then back across with caution. To enjoy Faye's lemons, it's essential I survive lemons that fellow Angelinos drive. She's 82. At 40, I'm a boy. She waves goodbye to me with her bouquet. This place was Beanfields back in 35 when she moved with her husband to LA. And it was Beanfields. There was a lot of open space, as you all know, between downtown and Santa Monica prior to the Second World War. I'll finish with a poem which is set where my wife and I currently live. It's up toward the top of Beverly Glen. And if you look east out of the back window, you can see, if it's clear, across the canyons to downtown. And one day I noticed something I couldn't make visual sense of. It looked like a kind of white pillar or giant stick that was placed halfway up one of the more prominent hills in the distance. But then I realized what it was and wrote this poem, and I thought of reading it tonight because one thing we all as writers want to do is see things freshly and from different perspectives and not get trapped in stereotypes. And heaven knows there are lots of stereotypes about Los Angeles and its places and people. A landmark. When I first noticed it, it seemed to be a pillar on the south slope of Mount Lee. It took some scrutinizing to divine in it the profile of the famous sign. To see that there across the canyon stood the left stem of the H of Hollywood. I'd never thought the full sign was that great. Originally an ad for real estate, it looked too plain and pushy for renown. I'd liked it best the time the H blew down and left its 8 companions to proclaim a Cockney version of the area's name. Yet from a vantage distant and oblique, I realized it had a modest streak. It fit into the landscape and at night let darkness hide it. So the blinking light on Mount Lee's ancient TV tower could enjoy star billing in the neighborhood. When seasons turn the canyons, gold or green, I see a sign most others haven't seen. I'll hand guess the binocs and point it out. Their faces brighten as initial doubt disperses, and the intervening air fills with a recognition that we share. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Timothy. I think the mic is like wandering around here, so adjust a little bit. Our next reader is Dana Johnson, who is the author of the short story collection In the Not Quite Dark. She's also the author of Break Any Woman Down, winner of the Flannery O'Connor Award for Short Fiction, and the novel Elsewhere, California. Both books were nominees for the Hurston Wright Legacy Award. Her work has appeared in Plowshares, the Paris Review, and Callaloo, amongst others, and in several anthologies. Her most recent project was Trailblazer, Delilah Beasley's California. Johnson is a professor of English at the University of Southern California. Please, everyone, welcome Dana Johnson.
Thank you, Quentin. And thank you, Janice, for organizing us tonight. I am going to read just a few pages from a short story called Wyatt Earp Days. It's a longer story, so I'm just going to read a few pages. And I guess the only thing you need to know is that two brothers are on their way to ask one of the brothers' friends for money to start up a venture that the younger brother is feeling a little bit ambivalent about. And he's the narrator of the story. And I think that's all you need to know. The days when white men and white men alone could find their fortunes in the West from mining green gold were over. It was time for other pioneers to seek their fortunes and build empires that would last generations. Those had been my cowboy thoughts, though I wondered about how we would make our success happen. My brother and I had driven with casual ease out of California and through the desert on our way to Tombstone, Arizona, and like the people, now ghosts, traveling west, we would almost lose our lives in the endeavor. Cannibalism and freezing to death were no longer legitimate fears, but a rush is still a rush, and we had underestimated the deranged logic of lawlessness. Cannabis was what we were after. My brother had been planning this trip for weeks for Wyatt Earp Day, so I could meet his friend Jake Stone, an old timer, his one-time boss at Stone Containers Box Factory. Jake was rich was all I knew, because that's all John ever told me, with admiration, without jealousy. He had used his wealth to help John out of a bind years ago, drunk driving bail when my brother was so young that working for Jake had been his first job. Now my brother called himself an old man, but he was still driving the same forklift. Jake had retired on a mound of cash in Arizona. I had never been to that part of Arizona, but I was eager for Tombstone and Wyatt Earp Day, people dressed up like it was the 1800s, fake guns, saloons, boot spurs kicking up dirt. Tombstone was one of my favorite movies. Jake, though, was another matter. Something about my brother's excited stories of Jake buying endless rounds of drinks with cash, big bills, and a money clip like a mobster. The fact that my brother somehow knew details of Jake's extravagant trips. To tell someone without shame that you ordered a $4,000 bottle of champagne, that was a mean thing to do. Make the rest of us feel like ant smear between godly fingers. On the other hand, I remember when John was in jail years ago, me sitting alone in our apartment, wondering what had happened to my brother. My mother disappeared with some connection in some drug house somewhere. And then that night, finally someone, the crunchy sound of the key working the lock, the doorknob turning, illuminated by the glow of the TV. I had stared at the doorknob terrified because I had assumed that finally I had been left all alone in this world, and whatever was coming through that door was there to finish me. The final boy in the horror movie. But in walked my brother, delivered to me like magic, delivered to me by a rich God. The Sonoran Desert whipped past us. The sun was a flinty warning we were stupidly used to growing up in the California desert of Moreno Valley. We listened to Tupac and Bowie as the copper ball in the sky peeked between those cotton candy clouds, roasting all living things beyond the safety of our windows. We drove in air-conditioned obliviousness in a moon age daydream. You should see Jake's house, my brother said. He wiped his shaved head, which often glistened with sweat no matter the temperature, and then he wiped his hands on his big thighs. He sucked a lollipop that was mostly CBD and not THC, he told me. No high, just relaxation. That's a lollipop, I had said when he took it out of the wrapper. I don't know what I was expecting, maybe something more illegal looking. I did not partake in anything other than the occasional drink. I believed in control. Don't call it that, he said. I'm a grown man, it's a sucker. All of it, lollipops, chocolate, even cannabis water was legal now, but I still felt like I was on the wrong side of the law just to have it in the car. I felt that way doing ordinary things, of course, shopping while being me, eating while being me, sitting in my own apartment while being me. The law I understood. Its arm was long and relentless. Control, rules, upright citizenry. I lived like I wanted to be seen as the cowboy in the movies dressed in white. Our dad had died when I was a baby, and my mother, grieving, had drunk, shot up, and died eventually, as one does, on drugs. Drugs we had always avoided, but I got stopped and frisked for them anyway. 3 times in my 22-year-old Toyota, insulated with the detritus of fast food wrappers, the blue paint suspiciously dull and rusted. And once in a brand new but rented BMW I'd saved up to ride in style to my prom. When I'd wanted drugs legally, Xanax for feeling anxious, my perpetual disposition, my doctor had refused because of the quote, risk of addiction. Don't you know, John had said, after telling me to get my shit together the old-fashioned way by channeling some long ago unknown ancestor and living as they did by leaning into the pain. You gotta be white to get that kind of help with a prescription. When I asked him why he was so determined to get into the weed business, he told me, to have money, dummy, why does anyone sell drugs? And that was why the trip we were on was big, bigger than weed-infused lollipops. He was gonna ask Jake to loan us money to open up our own dispensary. Jake had saved him once, and maybe he'd save him again from working until he dropped dead. John had done the research. He could get one going for $200,000 to $300,000 and then sit back and watch the money roll in. White people are the only ones getting rich off weed, he'd said. Jake be getting richer too, and there's no way he's not gonna say yes to that. John had been the kind of big brother who pinched my neck and dragged me away from standing around the parking lot of 7-Eleven at night because he didn't want me to get in trouble for something I did or didn't do. It's that old story of big brothers preventing little brothers from fucking up. And maybe that's why he looked up to Jake, because there was no father to grab him by the neck when he was a boy, no one to save him. He'd only had Jake. Also, John's kids had come early, and then all of a sudden, poof, nearly 40 years of life gone by before he could suck a lollipop in peace. A lot of people would say he'd had a good life, nothing to complain about, a wife who loved him until he'd blown up his marriage for some girl at the gym with a silicone ass purchased in Baja. Kids who turned out good, teachers, bank tellers, office managers, jobs nobody respected, jobs with no flex, clout, or likes. I owed him big time for my life as an accountant at Duckett Smaller, a small place, but a steady job. We had an annual casino night and a pool party where all the men wore their t-shirts in the water. Never underestimate the power of someone bigger and older than you telling you to get a grip every day of your life. He talked me out of being an English major, for which I was eternally grateful, I told myself. I didn't keep you out of jail and out of the morgue, he had said, so you could embarrass me. Still, John always complained about other people doing better and getting more. All the work he'd done, raising John Jr., Jamarcus, Jamari, and Madison, clothing them, feeding them, the rent late, yes, but never once being evicted, the phone and lights turned off only a dozen times while his kids grew up. How disgusting, that level of success. Basic shit, he was always saying, just basic broke ass shit. As we drove, I tried to worry less about the details of how we were going to get rich, and I imagined a different life. I put myself in one of those ugly houses like the ones on reality shows, fake manors that were monochromatic and cavernous, that echoed because there was no art on the walls, no books to be found. I went ahead and gave myself a bowling alley and a theater and red velvet seats, rows of them plush and wide, enough for 2 people to sit in or for 1 person to lie astride in. There was a pool I would never use because I was afraid of water, of drowning. And there were deep walk-in pantries filled with Mountain Dew and dried beans because I didn't know how to cook. Eventually though, the sun shifted and the clouds turned from pink to a purplish blue. I reined it in. I thought about what would really be a dream come true, not paying student loans until I die. But my dreams had taken on a fuzzy, ominous gauze, like the moment in Carrie, when that curly-haired white girl is putting flowers on Carrie's grave, when all of a sudden a hand pops up through the grave and grabs her. I wish I hadn't seen that movie or this. Jake had a giant bald eagle as wallpaper on his Facebook page. Memes of things he didn't even realize had been photoshopped and faked. Black people dancing around a burning American flag. The expected comments underneath, demanding that Black people go back to Africa, the country, if this country wasn't good enough for us. A photo of Obama's birth certificate, dated and verified to have originated from Kenya. What was I supposed to do with information like that? Jake, who I'd never met, was the man who had saved my brother. At least that's how I grew up thinking of him, the story I'd always believed. But who was this on Facebook? I said this to John, scrolling through Jake's page, when he'd really only wanted me to look at Jake's new black Cadillac Escalade, the big shiny rims. But I couldn't stop reading the comments under the dancing Black man stomping on the American flag. I said, really? Look at it, dude, look at that picture. And he'd said, I don't care what's on Jake's page, loyalty fool. You young Negroes are some canceling ass motherfuckers. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dana. I'm really glad you read that actually, because I think the very earliest version of that you read here on our 50th anniversary. I think we commissioned some writers when we turned 50 to write about midlife crises, and that was what Dana sort of came with, if I remember correctly. I also want to plug Dana is running a book club for us in November, starting with Octavia Butler's Kindred. So check that out. Our next reader is Cody Sisco. He's an author, editor, publisher, and literary community organizer. His LGBT psychological science fiction series includes 2 novels thus far, Broken Mirror and Tortured Echoes. He is a freelance editor specializing in genre-bending fiction and an editor for Running Wild Press. In 2017, he co-founded Made in LA Writers, an indie author co-op dedicated to the support and appreciation of independent authors. His startup Bookswell is a literary events and media production company dedicated to lifting up marginalized voices and connecting readers and writers in Southern California and beyond. He serves as a co-executive on the board of governors for the Editorial Freelancers Association and is a board member at APLA Health. Please welcome Cody Cisco.
It is so good to be here in person.
Thank you, Janice. You deserve a round of applause and a good vacation. Thank you, Quentin and Yvonne and the Beyond Baroque team. This is actually the first time I'm reading it Beyond Baroque, so it's kind of feels like a big deal for me. I'm going to read from Made in LA, Volume 3. This is an anthology series that gives up space for local authors to write about the city we all live in. And this particular book was due to be published in March of 2020, and due to a few small things happening, that was delayed until October of that year. So this book hasn't really seen the real world that much. And this story is, it's about 5 characters who are drawn together in a kind of apocalyptic vortex. And I'll read a little bit from 2 of the characters' experiences. The story is called Call Us Home. Luis doesn't usually resent his C-list looks, even on a Friday night when the clubs and bars in Hollywood fill with jaw-droppingly gorgeous and hopelessly naive fools hungry for dreams. Looks aren't everything. A block off Hollywood Boulevard, he intersects a red carpet stained by heavy use and a bouncer with a cannabis stare. The line for a Pretty Laundry private event has glam young things busy taking selfies and texting friends. They have no idea what life has in store for them. Were they to ask Luis, they wouldn't. He's a nobody. He'd say every curve comes back around. Luck and looks don't last forever. Sure, it would be nice to be seen and appreciated, but Luis is fine not being noticed. He's always been average in pretty much every way. On paper, without bias, he reads as attractive. Medium build and height, light brown skin, mild, indistinct features. People tend to scan past him. When introduced, friends of friends forget his name within a few seconds. I'm Luis, I'm nobody, don't worry about it. In school, other students got more attention as he plodded forward, earning C's and B's. Sometimes he had to correct his teachers, who tended to mark him absent by default. He slips past the Pretty Laundry lineup and the bouncer unnoticed. When the door swings open in front of him and disgorges 2 stumbling white chicks, he moves inside. The bar is decorated with over-the-top Orientalism. Red paper lanterns from IKEA, paw-waving Lucky Buddha statues, and conical hats that look highly flammable. Whoever planned the decor is highlighting the fact that the Oscars nominated a rom-com written and directed by a Taiwanese woman for Best Picture, which is worth celebrating, but this isn't the right way to do it. Culture fail, he thinks. Someone's going to cancel this place fast. There's a lot of canceling going on. Catching the actor/model/bartender's attention is a challenge. Luis ducks under the bar flap, catches a firm bicep, and asks for the thing Salt asked him to pick up. It takes a few repetitions of, I'm Luis, I'm here for Salt's thing, to get through to the dude. Eventually, he hands over a small, sparkle-flecked gift bag with the heft of a mason jar that sloshes heavily, thickly. He can't begin to guess what's inside, and there's no way he's going to open it to check. The one time he ventured into Salt's apartment, tiny gargoyle statues watched his every move, and wax strippings on the carpet followed him as he walked. He'd been told Salt knew about every weird thing in LA, that Luis's cloak was a gift, and he shouldn't worry about it too much, and it would be useful if he could run a few errands. Job done, Luis leaves the bar by the front door. No one notices. He'll deliver whatever this is to Salt tomorrow morning, so now he's free to buy beer for Darnell. It's kind of a requirement. Luis knows the limits of their relationship. Fuck buddies, that's all. Darnell comes back again and again, sure, but he only visits on the promise of BJ's and brews. In return, he hooks Luis up with deals at a bistro in Culver City. The first time Darnell came over, after round 1, he said it looked like a white dude's apartment. Luis had shrugged. It looks like it costs a lot of money, but he hasn't paid a cent. I'm Luis, I'm nobody, echoes in his head as he walks down the street, keeping pace with leaves and trash blowing and rattling in the gutters. Someday, it would be nice to have something more serious than a fuck buddy. But most people don't give him a first glance, let alone a second. How is he going to get them to pay attention long enough to take him seriously, as Darnell says, and see if they're a good fit for something more? Even when Luis is shouting his loudest, people barely hear him. The strip mall is surrounded by homeless. No one asks him for money. He sometimes brings them sodas and snacks he's stolen, yet he's never been thanked. Unseen, average, forgettable, just like me, he thinks. Only people notice the homeless more. Shoplifting is his meditation. Walking up and down the aisles of Target and slipping batteries into his pockets, or leaving Home Depot on Sunset Boulevard, pushing a shopping cart full of unpaid for potted plants, his cares evaporate. With a baby face and a layer of otherworldly camouflage, no one considers him a threat or a risk. The staff rarely take notice of him at all. He's never been caught stealing anywhere. Not that he lives entirely on stolen goods, that would get tedious. A 12-pack of Pacifico fills his arms like a hug. The bag for salt dangles from his fist as he passes the liquor store's register without slowing. He can't understand why he has stopped on his way out the door. "You gotta pay for that," the security guard yells as he does an end run to face Luis, eyes bulging, ready to take him down. At first, Luis is speechless. This hasn't happened before, ever. The security guard puts a hand on his taser. Luis swallows a lump in his throat and manages to say, "Oh, right, of course, my bad." A nervous laugh bubbles up unfeigned. "Where is my mind?" He pays the cashier under the security man's glare without any further words. But when he goes outside, he has to stop and catch his breath. What the fuck just happened? "Hey, you look familiar." A white woman in her 40s, hair matted and barefoot, approaches and squints in his face. "I seen you on a poster." She rears back as if he's gonna bite her. "Oh shit, you're the Night Stalker." She stumbles, draws a quick breath, and screams so hard it sounds like her vocal cords could snap. Luis spins on his heels and quickly crosses the street. She follows and screams after him, "You're a murderer, you're a liar, a thief, a child molester, a Satanist," and more. Half a block down, he outpaces her enough that her ravings appear unrelated to him, if anyone is bothering to listen. However, as he passes another woman out walking her dog, she looks hard at him and rushes into the nearest yard, shouting for help and knocking on the front door. He hurries home even faster and considers dropping the beer and salts thing and running flat out. But that would look bad, and it would mean admitting the problem is far worse than he wants it to be. Many people are on edge about nuclear bombs in the Middle East, or because Oscar season looms. You can never tell with Hollywood. Luis arrives home and locks the door behind him. He drains half a beer in a few gulps. He'd been noticed. His heart is pounding. He's out of breath. He's been noticed, and the result had not been good. Between one gasp and the next, his phone rings, and someone knocks on his door, spooking him. He drops the beer, and the bottle shatters on his concrete kitchen floor. While he's picking up glass pieces, a finger gets nicked and starts bleeding. In the other room, his computer begins to ping again and again as emails roll in one after another. Checking his phone, he sees a text from an unknown number. "Call us home." And this next section is Salt, who Luis was going to pick up Salt's thing. So this is from Salt's perspective. "Imagine waking up bathed in sweat and blood. Another fun morning. The fan on the nightstand, which has been helping congeal the blood seeping from my wounds, isn't blowing anymore. Sunlight streams in through the window. It's sauna hot." This is all hitting a little too close, excuse me. "And apparently the power has gone out. Another morning, awake, alone, and in agony. I can do this," I mumble out loud and wince at the rancid smell of my own breath. It's day 5 of a restoration ritual that requires copious amounts of dairy products. At the start of the week, the refrigerator had been filled with 4 quarts of cottage cheese, the same amount of full-fat yogurt, a gallon each of goat's milk and cow's milk, and 8 cheese wedges from cheddar and Monterey Jack to brie and Emmental. Cheese smoothies are real, y'all. The expense had been enormous. The looks from the checker at the Whole Foods on Santa Monica Boulevard were priceless. Only 3,000 calories or so to go, and the ritual's dictates will be satisfied. The fermented eggnog from Pretty Laundry, when Luis brings it, will be the final component. I blame hellhounds. Last week, days after they bit my legs, my wounds continued to bleed, and death by fluid loss started to seem like a real possibility. So this dairy thing is a new approach. Something new is needed every now and then. Although I love to laze in bed, it feels like an 80-pound wheel of Parmesan is wedged somewhere in my lower bowel area, so moving around seems prudent. I roll out of bed and stand, wobbly from cheese brain. Then I notice something new that I don't like. I don't like it one bit. The gargoyle that usually sits on my bookshelf and breaks my rest with its mewlings about arcane emergencies has fallen and shattered, leaving a mixture of clay, soil, black goop, and curling mist on the floor. That's concerning. In fact, that's creepy as fuck. Wondering how my otherworldly colleagues will contact me now, I go to the kitchen and drink the last of the goat's milk, pop 4 lactades and a few more anti-gas tablets, and start toward the shower. The broken gargoyle is a sign, no doubt. Some kind of game, as they say, is afoot. Los Angeles, no matter what some locals claim, has never been a chill place, mystically speaking. The worldly mix of peoples, cultures, myths, and dreams gives rise to an otherworldly melting pot of ghosts, demons, essences, and beasts who mingle together and prey on a vulnerable population. I mean, we have werewolf assassins stalking the streets and killer hotels, like fly traps for the unsuspecting. Any ounce of chill has to be earned through tremendous effort and willful blindness. Anxious people see the truth, and it terrifies them, even when they're not fully conscious of the threat. Chill people push back the darkness in an act of power and stupidity that demands respect, even if it does put them at risk. I don't make it to the shower. In the hallway, a gray wisp swirls. Thunder and lightning war at the center of a vortex that opens up and sucks in the contents of the hallway. Pictures, flameless candles, and after much yelling and cursing and grabbing at door frames, myself. In the second before I disappear, I realize that if the game is afoot, I've just been snatched from the board. If I blow dairy chunks in limbo, I'm not responsible. Thank you.
Thank you, Cody. I can't believe you've never read here, actually. That's great to hear you. Definitely not the last time, too. Our next reader is Peter J. Harris, who's the Altadena Poet Laureate, Editor-in-Chief. He's the author of Safe Arms, 20 Love and Erotic Poems with an Ooh Baby Baby Moan, with Spanish translations by Francisco Letelier, and also forthcoming, as I mentioned, Song Again from Beyond Baroque Books. In 2015, his book of poetry, Bless the Ashes, won the Penn Oakland Josephine Miles Award. And his book of personal essays, The Black Man of Happiness, In Pursuit of My Unalienable Right, won the American Book Award. Harris is the founding director of the Black Man of Happiness Project, a creative, intellectual, and artistic exploration of Black men and joy. He writes the blog Wreaking Happiness, a joyful living journal at www.inspirationcrib.com. Please welcome Peter J. Harris.
Thanks so much. Oh, man. Something ferocious, something delicious. On sidewalks, in the marketplace, as humble pedestrians, we are talk, blending language to our bidding, grammar, syntax, muffled with common terms, common signs, common meanings. Up under, shuddering, shattering, we are acoustic genius moaning, wordless surging promises, throbbing autobiography, something ferocious, something delicious. Let other people dwell on their helpless surfaces kneel and pray to hear the drumming between us. Cover the sound circling from our fluent and chemical skin. Their protocol and hesitation complicated by our patent leather disdain. Our promenade is syncopated teasing, cunning beats scratched from suspense amplify our multiplication. Other people go insane, surging and swooping to our fandango. Still beg to hum the music emanating from our deep and wordless jam. Wrong ears burn at the music we compose. Sun blinds, spies, trafficking, gossip about us. Wind sweeps away the memories of people who mean us harm. Mountains crumble warnings to any with prying disposition. Alone within our consecrated circumference, whirlpools leap from a cappella proverbs, falsetto water bubbles, ferocious drumming, delicious between us. Our reverberating momentum is a choir at rest. At city crossroads, joy lift baggy clothes into smiling balloons, awe trailing like string dancing in the wind. All of our lives whipped into moraine by teenage recklessness, drenched with mesmerizing sight of love on display, holding hands like human beings unhinged from tragic theory. At the corner of win and lose, glorious passion waits for light to turn gold, riveting theater in their stroll. Smoother than wheelchairs stopping traffic, stepping through crosshairs until crosswalk releases the scent of cobbler. At unexpected intersections, the Black man of happiness catches stories right before intonation shapes words, stands in the flow that melts cataracts and shows hidden insistence, seized by the grammar of submission, awed, porous, magnetic, Ptah, first island among waters of chaos, absorbing shock of creation in everyday lives, converting atom of thought into power and voice, released from rules of thumb by shifting voices within waters, whose guidelines subvert all rules and change the only mortar or protection, holding together life and death between the blues. You know it, baptized and sculpted, sifting pits and stems for fruit above the waterline, legs wrapped around submerged roots, anchored, swaying in mother breeze of first meetings, shape of destiny rippling across democracy's mural, still sweating on the back of his eyes, offering no explanation beyond the tingle of invention, fearing no weariness, even within deep memory of being quarry for dogs and hysteria, consoled by ferocious humanity at the crossroads of creation and death, the Black man of happiness, the voyeur translating the surreal privacies of our living metropolis. ID card, a moody hologram, tinted in everybody's complexion. Face wet in witness to daily rites of passage. Intoxicated by our sophisticated lives. Naked with peaceful recognition. Oh yes, game to face dogs and hysteria. Prone to find trails to safety. Protected always by the commanding serenity comes from waiting with whatever the water brings, holding hands when a fist is needed, unclenching when it's time to just know what needs be known. Okay, so thank you so much. It's really quite stunning to be here after all these years. I have read here often, but never, at this sort of phase in a life, you know what I mean? I'm a grown ass dude now, this, many, many years ago when Fred Dewey was here, we were all young. I was super, super young. And, the chance to read or to be among folks, it still moves me to the core and to the quick. But these days, just feel, like in stride, it's my son turns like 45 years old at the end of this month. And it just blows me the fuck away. I'm telling you that I have a 45-year-old son. And I tell you honestly, and tonight especially, the idea that I would still be doing this, that I would have a book out from one small press in Texas called Flower Song, and that I could collaborate with a genius like Francisco Letelier, who also designed this cover, by the way. And that this venerable organization believes enough in the work to put out this book coming up. I could have never imagined. So I just simply say, as a son of June Puckett Harris and Pleasant Samuel Harris Jr., New York foster child, father from Virginia, that I stand here totally, totally humbled. So I'll close with this thing for Reggie Wilson and the dance organization called Fist and Heel. If you've never seen them, go see them. It's just the most amazing shit you'll ever see. This is called The Good Dance. Contemplation in sync with acoustic tenderness. Selection in tempo. Slow locomotion through rite of passage. Vamp to the electricity of cleansing overflows. Reminiscences in stationary orbits. Beauty summoned and sifted from space between fist and heel. Body as holy book. Damp pages torn in the storms, torn from the storms. Slosh of bilge water in a bottle, drained from return voyages to Spain, to England. Walking on waves, buoyed by precious memories. Debilitating echoes in voices of barefoot children begging tourists in 21st century doorway of a 16th century cathedral. Lightning flicks from dangling pinky. Skin taut by textured undulations. Winding hips of alchemy. Breezy flex cools dirty rice plie. Gestures buttery as Aunt Haley's Sunday biscuits. Sacred secrets palpitating like last minute spice powdering the dough. Complexion of suavest acrobat. Muscle threatening to pour away from bone. Honey, don't gulp down your ice water. Button up your life vest and remember to share your recipe with Jesus. Can you turn open this bottle top? That whisper, oh baby, that's your grandmother visiting her kitchen between the H2 and O. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. Speaking of time passing, I think I met Peter 23 years ago, and I've been a fan ever since. I don't think he remembers it, but I remember it very well. So, yeah. We got 2 readers left. And speaking of being a fan, I am a huge fan of our next reader, Lynne Thompson. I think all of Los Angeles is a fan because she is Los Angeles' 2021-2022 Poet Laureate. Yes. And a 2022 Poet Laureate Fellow of the Academy of American Poets. Thompson is the author of 3 collections of poetry, Beg No Pardon, Start with a Small Guitar, and most recently Fretwork, winner of the 2019 Marsh Hawk Poetry Prize, recipient of multiple awards and fellowships, including several Pushkart Prize nominations. Thompson sits on the boards of Cave Canem and the Los Angeles Review of Books, and recently completed her term as chair of the Board of Trustees at Scripps College. Her work can be found or is forthcoming in Best American Poetry, New England Review, Black Warrior Review, amongst many others. So please, everyone, welcome Lynne Thompson.
Well, thank you for that. I'm so happy to be here, although I'm a little irritated to be following Peter Harris, but and you all heard why. So I was thinking as Quentin was making those lovely remarks, I'm safeguarding a title for a little bit, and it means a lot to me, but it doesn't mean as much to me as reading with these amazing writers and being here with all of you tonight. That means even more. Thank you, Janice, and the food's the bomb. And thank you, Beyond Baroque. So I'm going to read a few pieces from a new manuscript. Separate, separate. Mother conjured me as an adjective before she verbed me, as disconnected, placenta notwithstanding, as discreet, thinking I would never tell, as distinct in the way the outlines drawn around a victim of mayhem are distinct, as freestanding, but who among my kinfolk was ever truly free? Or maybe my first mother just chose to disentangle, to sever my limbs from her torso, to sunder, let go, let God, that bitch. See literature and law, how they enshrine dichotomy, a separate piece, separate but equal. While some musicians propose a different riddle, see a tribe called quests separate together, where we stand great among creation, the process of bringing someone into existence, the polar opposite of unmaking by separation. The etymology made manifest as separatum, circa 1425, just about the time the Portuguese began to traffic in snatching the fula and the wolof, asleep in the teal. Is this how the art of our disjoining became so popular that now it's not extraordinary to remove pearls from their oyster, to poach an elephant's tusk for the ivory? Seeking paradise. Don't tell me how I came to be born by a river. Instead, won't you bring me honeysuckle and applause of Mexican marigolds? Tell me how stardust bequeaths its anthems and will not die, so you can bring me a rebanada de cielo that stopped its weeping. Tell me Sam Cooke had it right, singing "A change is gonna come," but do not tell me about a child who crossed the Rio Grande to taste the US, but has been lost to her mother, doesn't know when she will eat again. Don't you know this girl will remember and then without warning, kill you while you sleep between your twisted sheets? I wish you would bring us jalapenos baked into sweet cornbread, and with it, some green tomatoes, capers, a subtle Casa Madero. Won't you bring us memories of a dog, a ball, or all of Saturday to do what children want Saturday to do? Why can't you be kind? Why won't you in paradise us? In this life, this 8 to the bar, I am single-voiced, generous despite the bubble burst of life's techno madness, the density of its point and penciled vanishing. I wish I could hear a live John Coltrane, not looking down, inside every step, between, while I am just here, corner of kelp and Pacific O, unable to be anywhere else, my gun wiped clean, almost. Chiaroscuro of pronouns. Not that I get the hang of our oh, I wanted to say before I read this, Shonda, this is for you, and you'll know why at the end. Little surprise. Chiaroscuro of pronouns. Not that I get the hang of our generational collage, but I resemble prestidigitation when I turn thunderbolt. I can say milk tree when I eye someone's mumbo jumbo, while I tell you I am bone and drain, make book. You are common shorthand versus exaggeration. I am little leaf linden. You are someone believes. If we were we would need them of the Black markings. It is everyone's last season, a paradox inside the incredulity of cuckolds, and the rest of us leapt over. Then came you. It had to be you. I think that I, the way that we, with liberty and justice for no one. Jimmy Baldwin saying people are trapped in history and history is trapped in them. Mr. Rogers asking, won't you be my neighbor? Nina Simone chiding, oh, sinner man, where are you gonna run? See, it made sense. And just 3 more. Actually, I wasn't gonna read this, but I am gonna read this. Or not. They're not super long. Ode to Bones. My brothers gave child me the nickname Bones, presumably because when they looked at me, they thought she is nothing but skin and. The playwright Titus Plautus gets the credit, earned or otherwise, for saying your name is your destiny. But what, after all, can Romans tell us today? Suppose instead that a name is the past to build a bridge to cross over. If this is true, I could be bones of my parents' beloved carob birds, a lesser Antillean tanager, Cuban grassquit, Jamaican crow, the bones of ancestors stolen from Africa, the Hottentot teal, brown booby. Or maybe after all bones are just playing into the game as in the game of dominoes, where the goal is to get the die from the boneyard. On the other hand, it could be that music makes all the difference. This old man, he played 1, give a dog a bone. This old man, he played 5 with a knick-knack paddywhack. And never forget to look in your kitchen, to put bones in your stock. Bones to add flavor to a mirepoix, calcium, phosphorus, and magnesium. To use a boning knife to separate the flesh of the salmon or trout or bass. Their bones may be as small as yours or mine, stupendous to keep the voices in your head from driving you crazy, or as large as the femur or tibia, each fighting for supremacy. This is a cento that relies on the lines of Langston Hughes. Langston won't stay in his grave, calls me rose of neon darkness, calls himself early blue evening, black smoke of sound, says we are related, you and I, reminds me we are wandering in the dusk, our faces a chocolate bar facing the night of two moons. And though I'm a lonely little question mark, he laughs. Life is for the living with gypsies and sailors. Till the old junk man's death plants your feet in the cool swamp mud, shake your brown feet, honey. Wander through this living world. Get out the lunchbox of your dreams. Stay awake all night with loving or be a woman in the doorway. Death don't ring no doorbells or say, here is that sleeping place, as if it were some noble thing. Think how thin and sharp the moon is tonight. Don't mind dying, veiling what darkness hides. Haunt like mystery, like a naked bone in gumbo. Nod at the sun. And I'll close with this. Thank you. When nothing else will do. I don't want to pluck my burr from his flesh, nor do I want to be kind. Or if I am to be kind, I want to be a kind of chameleon, night blue fluorescent. I want to kill that gnat on the wall, but I don't want to hoover under our once bed, site of our rub-a-dub. I don't want to be a full set of some starlet's perfect teeth, and despite having nothing to boost, I want to walk around wearing only my bustier. I don't want a flower unless I Narcissus, and yes, I will honor and always my fey black body, our first delights and our mornings. I want to tell his best mother everything, that I don't want him to ever forget my length of legs, both of my hands just there. I think I want to know what he wants, but perhaps I shouldn't look in that mirror because, and even because is a kind of want. So just tell me, what has he been reading? Kafka, Morrison, manga for anime? All I want is for my hair to anemone and the not wanting to go for broke, while I drink honey bourbon and listen again, then over again. Not a day goes by. Thank you.
Thank you, Lynn, and thank you all for coming. We are now reaching the ends of our program. I just want to thank all the readers again. Also mention, please do buy their books. You have a rare opportunity to get them signed and maybe even have like a pretty deep discussion on autographs with Josh or any of the authors. But our last reader, I think, deserves an especially big round of applause because she really put this whole evening together. Janice Littlejohn has done an incredible job organizing this. Just deeply appreciative to her. Just to tell you a little bit more about Janice, she is the 2022 LA Press Club SoCal Journalism Awards Race and Culture finalist for her LMU magazine article Crowning Achievement, highlighting the issues Black people face in the workplace for wearing naturally textured hairstyles. The previous year, Janice was selected as a Zora Neale Hurston Richard Wright Foundation 2021 Summer Writers Nonfiction Fellow. A former columnist for the Associated Press, Janice has been published in more than 60 consumer and trade publications, including the Los Angeles Times, Miss Magazine, Shondaland Essence, Emmy, USA Today, and the Los Angeles Review of Books, where she was a senior editor and director of special projects. In addition to her work in journalism, Janice is an author, editor, screenwriter, and social justice activist. She is an alumna of Loyola Marymount University and the University of Southern California, where she received an MA. She's currently the associate director of the Los Angeles Institute for the Humanities, where she is also an adjunct instructor at the Annenberg School's Specialized Journalism Graduate Program. She's also just a real joy to work with and an incredible person. So please welcome Janice Littlejohn.
This is amazing. It is overwhelming. It is humbling. I just want to thank everybody for being here. I know that this is a new thing for us at the Los Angeles Institute for the Humanities, but I think this will be an annual thing. This feels like a necessary annual thing. As I was thinking about the theme of Los Angeles, I was thinking about a meditation that I wrote about 4 years ago and just stuck it up on my website. And as I decided to take a look at it again, it feels like a testimony to Los Angeles and to the small things that grow out of the cracks like sage. And this piece is about my parents and how they came together. It's called A Market, a Riot, a Church. It's Easter Sunday when I arrive at the church more than an hour early for the service, hoping for a moment of solitude. Instead, the choir is there rehearsing, "He is risen." But I concentrate harder on the image in my mind. Here comes the bride. Sitting in the back pew of McCarty Memorial Christian Church, I close my eyes and try to imagine my mother walking down the center aisle in her white gown and veil, her uncle by her side. They walk arm in arm as they walk toward the altar where she would vow her life, love, and fidelity to a young Marine in his dress blues who she'd known less than a year in a city that she had lived in not much longer. Being in this space makes the vision clearer. This is the first time that I've seen the sanctuary in color, giving a new context to the black and white wedding photographs I have in a small album, a keepsake that was passed down from my great aunt. I'd driven by this church on West Adams Boulevard for years. Then, several months, I found myself drawn to the sanctuary where they had been married 53 years ago this summer. My mom was never shy about admitting that she did not like my father when she first met him. They worked at the same grocery store, Boys Market on 11th and Hoover Street. She had gotten a job working in the non-foods department, journal merchandise as it was called, shortly after she arrived in Los Angeles from Cleveland, Tennessee. My dad is a native Angelino, but was raised in Texarkana, Arkansas, until he graduated from high school, returning to the Southland the very next day to forge a life away from the South. By the time he had met my mother, he had recently graduated from Los Angeles Trade Technical College and was working as an electrician and part-time in the grocery department at the market. But by the following year, along with more than 2 million men of that time, my father was eventually drafted to serve in the Vietnam War. My parents initially connected on the stuff that makes up rom-com meet cutes. He asked her out. She politely declined. He was too arrogant for her taste, as she tells it, walking around the store like he owned the place. He acted like he thought he was a Goldstein, she would say, giggling. The Goldsteins, brothers Al, Max, Bernard, Eddie, and Joe, were the owners of the store where my parents worked, and 53 others in a chain of markets predominantly located in ethnic minority and immigrant communities. Mom got the job because she had an inside connection. Aunt Essie worked as a domestic in the Goldstein family home, while Uncle Louis worked in the meat department at one of the stores. Dad, before meeting my mother, had never met anyone from the Goldstein family, but it did not stop his confident swagger, and he still has it. The two were at the market On a hot summer night, when the Watts riots broke out on August 11th, 1965. Despite being from the South, where nightly news of the time showcased civil rights protests and unfolding unrest in numerous cities, my mother had never been in such close proximity to this kind of violence that was now erupting through the streets. Radio reports and gossip through the market from incoming customers told of an altercation between white Los Angeles police officers and a Black motorist, Marquette Fryer, suspected of drunk driving. Angry onlookers and tensions escalated, igniting 6 days of rioting in the area. And by the end of the week, more than 34 people died, 1,000 were wounded, and an estimated $50 to $100 million of property damage throughout a working class neighborhood less than 12 miles away. Mother didn't have a car, and she was afraid to take the bus. The news of fires, shootings, lootings, it all scared her. She lived in the West Adams district. Dad lived right here in Venice. He was heading out to check on his sister, Marie, who lived in Watts, but he offered to drop Mom off first, saying it was on his way. It wasn't. About 6 months later, he proposed. She said yes. That's the way you meet somebody when you're not wanting to meet somebody, Aunt Marie said, as she shared her recollections of my parents' courtship a few months later, as we sat on her front porch in her home in Watts, where she has lived for more than 60 years. A week before my visit to McCarty, my mother and I were on the phone. Notre Dame de Paris Cathedral was burning. A structural fire had broken out the morning after Palm Sunday services were held, destroying the roof, the spire, and it damaged its grand windows and vaulted ceilings. As my mother and I reminisced about the Palm Sunday service we had spent there in 2005, it became clear to me that I needed to go to McCarty. The church itself is pretty, yet weathered by years. Dry palm branches are tucked in the corners of the pulpit, remnants of the previous week's Palm Sunday service. The sanctuary is as it looks in the black and white photographs, and my mom still laments not having splurged for color photos. Burnt orange, brick, red, tan, and the occasional forest green, the polished terracotta square tiles that covered the flooring down the center aisle where my mother once walked. Some are embossed with various symbols, including a Celtic cross and a Hindu swastika, its arms pointing clockwise to the symbols of the sun as a sign of prosperity and good luck. Neither of my parents had been members of McCarty Memorial. Mom was raised Presbyterian. Dad was Church of Christ. And while she had been living with Aunt Essie and Uncle Lewis, she had been attending Mount Sinai Baptist Church, but renting that space was outside of her budget. She found McCarty Memorial in the yellow pages. They were advertising space for weddings, she told me, and she said their price was right. She attended the service there, liked it, and booked it. When I asked them earlier on their 50th wedding anniversary how they made it work, compromise, my mother said. Some things are just not worth fighting over. You have to just decide to let it go. Looking to my father, he nodded, what your mother said, with a sly smile and locking his eyes with hers, acknowledging, yes, dear, are the two most powerful words a man must learn to live happily ever after. Of course, theirs is no fairy tale marriage. I don't know any marriages that are. What I've seen of theirs has been fostered as much by compromise, yes dears and honeydews, as it has been intense clashes and some roll up your sleeves hard work. Relationships can't work without putting in the work. 4 years and a pandemic have happened since I first wrote this piece. And that former Marine and the young country girl who decided to take a chance on love have made it 56 years this June. And if that's not a happily ever after, I don't know what is. And on occasion, I pass the church when coming home from USC, traveling down West Adams, just a few blocks from Crenshaw. It's a detour I don't have to take, but I like knowing that it's still there too. Thank you.